So, ladies and gentlemen, we will now move to our last panel debate of the day to discuss those issues that the Commissioner has just raised. And joining me now to discuss this are, and please do come up as I introduce you, John Kennedy, President of the Irish Business and Employers Confederation, IBEC, and President of Western Europe at Diageo, Pierre-Alain de Smet, President of the Federation of Enterprises in Belgium, known as FBO-FEB, and President of De Koning. Jose Vicente Gonzalez, who is President and Director General of Electrothermia and JH Group, an induction heating company, and Vice President of the Spanish Confederation of the Employers Organizations, CEOE, and Peter Chase, Vice President Europe at the US Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to you all. We're going to dive straight in, and the Commissioner really did my job for me because he asked the crucial questions. How can trade help industry to compete in this challenging environment we face? How can industry contribute to having what he called the engaged and ambitious trade policy that works? Those are the key questions we want to talk about. If I could start, John, with the first thought from you, how important is trade in the industrial competitiveness equation, and what do you see as the key challenges? And do you take on board what the Commissioner said about the role of industry in helping to make trade policy more effective?
Yeah, well, I think the role is critical. I do want to congratulate the Commissioner on the progress that's been made recently. For us, for the company I work for, the Colombia-Peru Free Trade Agreement, the Central American FTA are very important to us. I work for Diageo, which is the biggest Scotch whiskey company in the world. We also make Guinness beer, Bailey's Irish Cream. And when we look at the future and see countries like India, which is the biggest whiskey market in the world, yet still has tariff barriers of about 150%, we know that there's tremendous growth that can drive our company and create jobs just by reducing those barriers. I looked at it from the Irish perspective. Take our dairy industry, for example. When the cap quotas come off in 2015, we'd expect dairy production to go up by over 50% in the country. And having access to foreign markets for those products is going to be very important to the Irish country. So from the private sector point of view, from an Irish point of view, the free trade agenda is critical to keep driving growth for us.
Okay, thank you very much. And Jose Vicente, I know you can't stay with us long this afternoon, and unfortunately we started a little late, so your time with us is limited. But for you, would you agree with the importance of trade for industrial competitiveness? And what are the key challenges for trade policy as we look to the future?
I think that the question is from my point of view, is very simple. Maybe many years ago, especially for an industry, to be local supplier or to be international supplier was an option. But today is not more an option. Or you are dealing or working with all over the world, or there are no way. It's not only a question from my point of view of volume of sales, etc., which of course is also important. It's also probably more important is when you are investing or exporting to different countries, you learn a lot. And in your country, your learn is always limited. Then you learn how to develop your business all over the world. And I congratulate also for the news from the Commissioner about this trade negotiation. But I expect Europe, we believe in the free market. We are not too much naive in these discussions, because sometimes we open completely our doors for the other products, and then in other countries the doors are theoretically open, but there are a lot of technical and other issues who limits very hard our penetration in this market. Okay. Let's to open the markets, but everybody, not only one side.
It must be reciprocal, otherwise we are showing naivety. Yeah. Come back to that in the discussion. But Pierre-Alain, if I could get a first thought from you, both of the importance of this issue, as Mr. Gonzalez just said there, if we're not international, if we're not exporting, we're nowhere, and how you believe, I mean, particularly picking up on this point from the Commissioner about the role the business community needs to play. He said, if we don't know what the problem is, we can't solve it. Would you agree that business itself has a key role to play in developing an effective trade policy?
Well, it is the opportunity for me, for us as business community, to tell our commissioner, to tell to Europe how much we are enthusiastic about the action he is leading, about those large agreements which are today in negotiation. And I understood that you were expecting from us to be somewhat more outspoken on how much we support those conclusions, those decisions. Now, if you give me 2 minutes, having listened to all presentations today, I would say one point did not appear enough, and it's directly, you will see, linked to our approach about trade. We didn't speak too much about the citizens of Europe. And the citizens, we all know, today they are anxious. Today they consider that Europe is a kind of an enemy. They see the problems with austerity, with losing their jobs. And so we have, very near of us, we have the elections. And I'm a little bit anxious about how they will answer with nationalistic, protectionist reactions. So it's so important what our commissioner today is doing, because it's the general theme about strengthening industry, and we know it's, in my country, it's 80 exports come for 80% from industry. So that's strengthening export, and strengthening export is needed. There's an absolute need to conclude those agreements. And if I may, I fully share the view of the commissioner. Of course, TTIP is the very first priority, but having worked a lot with Japan, I can say, with my experience of that country, how much we can expect in terms of productivity, in terms of quality in the bilateral development. So Japan is also a very important priority. And if I may, not only because I've lived 7 years in Brazil, but Mercosur, thinking about raw materials, resources,
So
also is important.
echoing that point that the Commissioner made, but if I could turn our attention back to TTIP for a moment because of the US Chamber of Commerce having Peter Chase with us. Peter, the Commissioner described, he said, if we can pull it off, the biggest bilateral deal ever. How important do you think that is for industrial competitiveness on both sides of the Atlantic? What's at stake here?
Well, thank you very much, Jackie. And I want to first start off by thanking Business Europe for inviting me to join you. And this is Business Europe's Europe Day. But I think that the reason that I was invited as a representative of the US Chamber of Commerce is because the US-European business relationship is like no other. It's based on our investment relationship. American companies have $2.2 trillion invested here. They are European firms. And Europeans, the trade policy of Europe is important to us. European companies have $1.7 trillion invested in the United States, a volume that far outweighs any other investor. European firms are American firms. And for both of us, both European firms in the United States, European firms here, and vice versa with American companies, as big as our economies are, in the United States, we keep reminding people that 95% of the world's customers are outside the United States. An aggressive trade policy, a trade policy that opens markets for all of us. For us, we are very appreciative of, in fact, the very aggressive trade policy that the European Union has had because it benefits the large number of American companies who are very invested here. TTIP, this is important for TTIP because we are so heavily invested in one another, because we are so integrated. If we do TTIP, it will improve the global competitiveness of our firms. Our big firms that are exporting directly, our smaller firms that can be exporting indirectly, but who will find new markets. It's truly critical. And last message, this is an agreement that we can do, and we can do it quickly. There's where industry comes in. We do have a major role to play to advise and support our trade negotiators.
Okay.